So, Fee, thanks a lot for chatting to me. Well, me and you chatting together really for this, launching your new FeePo, launching FeePo. So, do you want to just explain exactly what it is?
Thanks for having me, Sam. It's really good to be on the show. So I'm launching something next month called FeePo. I think some people might already know the name FeePo. So just to avoid any confusion, it's a new business. It's a new brand. So FeePo is going to be a brand new platform for strength and conditioning for female rugby players. To eliminate any confusion, as FeePo as my sort of Instagram handle, that is going to be no more, and we are launching a brand new platform for this, which I'm really, really excited about. It's coming in May, and our aim or our mission is to make strength and conditioning accessible to all levels. So at the moment, unless you're in the Premiership 15s or at the elite level, S&C provision is pretty scarce at the lower levels. So we're trying to put this out there to basically help support those levels.
What's kind of driven you to go towards this and to set up this new platform?
So as a player, I suffered my fair share of injuries, and without strength and conditioning as part of my regular regime, I wouldn't have been able to make a comeback, or at least I wouldn't have been able to make a comeback to the top level. So from 2010, when I suffered a pretty bad knee injury, 2.5 years later, making my return to the England team was a feat. And without strength and conditioning support, I don't think I would have got there. During my time being injured, I got a really good appreciation for S&C and what actually is being strong as a rugby player. Because as I was growing up, I was fairly athletic naturally, which was great because it meant I went through the player pathway fairly quickly. But what that didn't prepare me for was, the higher level of impacts at the top game, the training loads that you go through at the top level. And not only did I get a really good appreciation for S&C, I also was just really passionate about the science behind becoming an athlete. And since retiring, I've wanted to stay very close to the game. Now, as both a rugby coach, but also a strength and conditioning coach, because I feel like that's an area where women's rugby needs to come up, needs to sort of up their game with the level of provision that grassroots and champ level are receiving. So our main aim is to make strength and conditioning accessible to all levels. And what that means is whether you're starting rugby for the first time, if you're the casual rugby player who wants to rock up at the weekend and play and have a couple of pints, or if you're the aspiring sort of Prem 15s player, they have quite different levels of playing desire, I suppose, but they all require some level of preparation. Long gone are the days where you can just turn up on a Sunday and play a game and survive. We need to equip players better to stay safe and also to get more out of their playing experience in order eventually to bring the level of rugby, bring the standard of rugby up and up as the game grows.
And how will the platform work then, and how will it be accessible for all those players in the championship and lower down?
We are launching a website, and we're going to build a community around Instagram as well. So our Instagram is FeePo_HQ, and you can find us on our website at feepo.co.uk. First and foremost, this site is education based. Okay, we want to inspire female athletes to push themselves physically, and largely that comes down to providing a good education base first. So through education, we get buy-in, and through buy-in, we get training intent. And then through that intent, that's where we can get the outcome. And the outcome should hopefully be more people who are fit to play, people who play for longer, their sort of longevity on the pitch is longer, and also people's performances are better. On the platform, on the website, is a really inclusive resource for everything you need to do to become and stay the best player you can be. So on there, we've got articles which look at sort of the educational side of S&C. We've got blogs, which are sort of a bit more conversational based around the landscape of women's rugby. We've also got some skills and drills and how they relate to things that you can do in the gym environment to better your performance in those areas. So for example, if we're looking at the contact area or the jackal, what things in the gym or what things can you do in like a warm-up context can you do to make your jackal performance better? Also on there, which is a really exciting thing that I'm putting out, is the social element. We all play rugby ultimately to make friends and run around with like-minded people. So we've got a bunch of player stories on there looking at people's rugby journeys. Why do they play rugby? What sort of highs and lows have they endured? And in order to bring the community together and help people feel connected to other people in the game. Rugby has that power to bring people together. Ultimately, it's a community. People talk about rugby community a lot, and that is because we're a big family. And if you can't see it, you can't be it. And therefore, we've got to create the environment to help people feel like they belong. And I think FeePo does that really well in the social aspect on the player stories.
So you started when you were an amateur rugby player before everything moved into professional. You were a PT, personal trainer. So how difficult was that? How tough was it to manage the two? But do you think they kind of blended together well as being the two jobs really?
Yeah, I have experienced both sides in terms of amateur life and professional life, and it gives me a really good perspective on those experiences. It was tough working alongside playing at the top level. I think, though, it's nothing like what it is now. I think it's probably even more challenging as the game is growing, as the requirements for training and as an athlete is ever growing. As a personal trainer, it lended itself quite nicely to being an athlete as well, because it was flexible. I could change my diary around whatever training needs I had, and that was great. I was one of the lucky ones who could do that. I was also in an environment where strength and fitness was what I lived and breathed. So if I needed to do a gym session at work, that was quite easy. Yeah, a lot of people didn't have that luxury. I know many people who had to get up at 5:30 in order to do their training sessions around work. But then as the game grew and we became professional, and I was in the Rio training squad as well, and that was full time. It transformed my life, and it actually also transformed myself as an athlete. I was able to get the recovery that I needed in between training sessions, and I didn't have to work. I could have a nap. I would just be able to put more energy, therefore, into the training sessions, so I get more out of them. There's so much that you can achieve if you are professional. What I want to help people achieve is how do they maximize their training if they're still working, because there's a huge need for Premiership club players who have full-time jobs. It's incredibly difficult to train at the level that's required of them in and around work. If you're working a 9 till 5, or let's be honest, an 8 till 6, and then whizzing down the M3 to go to training, you're not going to be able to put the same effort into the training as someone who's not been working all day. So my time as a professional athlete was really, really great. I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Perfect. Obviously, you got injured in the 2010 World Cup semi-final, was it, against Australia? I believe. First of all, what injury was that? I was only 10 at the time, I think I would have been, so I wouldn't remember that. What was the injury and how difficult was that to come back from? And with being a personal trainer as well, did that affect anything, kind of your job and your career?
That makes me feel incredibly old that you were only 10 at the time of that. So yeah, 2010 World Cup. It's difficult to talk about my rugby playing career without mentioning that injury, and in that World Cup, it was defining for me. I think so. The injury that I suffered in that game was a quite severe microfracture and meniscal tear. I had surgery straight afterwards, and I was bedbound for 2 months. So it was quite a tough time. I don't know whether this is luckily or not luckily, but I had just graduated from university in that summer. So I moved back home to my parents' house to do my recovery there, basically. It was tough because I was cut off. I was cut off from my university friends. I was cut off from the playing squad who had just lost that final against New Zealand. Nobody wanted to talk to anyone. So it was quite tough to be so isolated, but I did have my family, and that saved me, really.
And a lot of the thing about being exercising well is, so it's not just keeping your body well, it's keeping your mind well and healthy. How tough was that kind of period on your mental health as well?
It was tough. It was really tough, especially coming from the high of the World Cup to then rock bottom. Because leading up to the injury, I was pitched at being one of the players of the tournament. I was the highest try scorer. Everything was going well, and then the worst happened, and it was I was 21, and I felt I hadn't reached my potential as a player. But then I was battling against this injury where the surgeons were saying, you might not play again. Let's see how it goes, but it's very possible that you might not play again. So I was really lucky that I had a great physio supporting me. I had to travel up to Twickenham twice a week to see him. Luckily, my parents were around and they could bring me, but the whole endeavour to come just for physio sessions was pretty tough. I just took every day as it came because there was no other alternative. There's no point in thinking, am I going to play again in the early stages? Because all you care about is when you can walk again. I was non-weight bearing for 6 months. That's a huge amount of time to be on crutches. So my steps were quite clear. They were getting out of bed, walking on crutches, walking off crutches, and then seeing.
And how did it feel to eventually come back from that injury and pull on an England shirt again?
Terrifying. It was terrifying because I was scared of being tackled at high speed. So the tackle which caused my injury was on the wing at full speed. Two opposing forces going against each other. I came off worse. So that was a real area of discomfort for me. So that's why I changed position to scrum half at that time for my comeback. It went quite well. It helped me learn the game again. So 2.5 years had passed by this point. The game had moved on. And so being so heavily involved in the decision making and the run of the game and the tempo changes at 9 was really, really helpful. Plus, you're limited on how many high speed collisions you get. So yeah. That also helped my confidence grow. Once I had a couple of months playing at 9 and realizing that it wasn't for me, I think Cara Finley at the time had some sort of harsh but honest words at the time, saying I don't think you're a 9. Let's get you back out on the wing. What can we do to facilitate that? So I had some psychology support in order to kind of like break over that barrier of running out on the wing again.
And was it strange? Obviously, 2.5 years is a long time in life, but in sport, lots can change in that time. Was it a bit weird coming back into an environment? Was it strange? Was it essentially a new environment at the time with players wise and the new setup?
Yeah, new environment. Quite a few people have retired after the 2010 World Cup, so there's lots of new faces. The game itself was more professional. Even then, even after the 2010 World Cup, we had made huge grounds in turning the game more professional. So I was entering basically a whole new environment after that injury. It was great because it felt really exciting and it felt like rugby was really moving up. That was quickly sort of taken away again when I did my ACL on my other knee.
And how difficult, having done one knee and doing the other, were you kind of in the position where you've had the recovery once, I can do it again? Or was it, I've just come back, now I have to do it all again? Was it, what kind of mindset were you in when that second injury happened?
My immediate thought was, oh no, what, not again. Why me? It was completely soul destroying, utterly soul destroying. I really struggled mentally around that injury. It wasn't as much of a severe injury as the first one, but psychologically it was really bad. And there was a point in the recovery where it was pretty likely that I wasn't going to be returning to rugby, just because I had used up all of my effort. I'd used it up in the last 2.5 years. There really wasn't much more left in the tank. But after 6 months, after I was running again, this thing about sort of like being able to run is the game changer, I think, with a lot of people with recovery. It's the point where you actually don't feel injured anymore. It's because I could run again. So what else can I do? So that's when my sort of like my psyche started to shift a little bit, thinking, could I do this? Could I come back again? And I had a conversation with Gary Street at the time. This was leading up to the 2014 World Cup. And we were just chatting. He's so friendly and accommodating to all sorts. You know, he's great to just have a chat, and it doesn't really define anything. You know, he's very great. He's great like that. And I just said, I don't think mentally I'm up for this. My body is okay. My body's back to where it was, but mentally, I don't think I can do it. And that was that. And I watched the World Cup from behind the TV screen like the rest of us, and they won, and it was heartbreaking.
I was obviously missing out on that when you've been coming back. Must have been tough. Do you feel like you missed out on something not being involved in that? Would you said you didn't feel like you were mentally up to it? Was there any point during that you regretted your decision?
I don't regret it because there was no choice really. So that helps that side of things. I was suffering quite badly with PTSD at the time, so there really wasn't much choice I had really. I think to flag earlier and have more sort of psychology support earlier might have helped, but it might not have helped. So it's difficult to say. No, I have no regrets. I'm absolutely thrilled that we got that win in 2014. It is gutting to not be involved in that, and I think I would be insincere if I said that I was completely happy for everyone who won, because what athlete at this level doesn't want to have also got that gold medal?
Do you think that win's kind of changed the way women's rugby in England is looked upon now? I think everything's kind of been slowly on the rise since then.
Definitely slowly on the rise. I think the last year or two there's been a massive change. We're in 2021 now, so there's actually a lot of time has passed since 2014. I think the game changer has been the setup of the Premier 15s, more so than that win. I think obviously that was pioneering and absolutely groundbreaking for English rugby, but on a broad scale of women's rugby, the Premier 15s has been integral to that.
And you were going to mention it earlier, but you said mention it later. Retirement. How do you want to kind of touch on that? Explain how it happened, how it came about, and just how tough it was to finally take that step away from the game as a player.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can talk about retirement. It's a tough one, but we can absolutely go for it. So, 2017 World Cup. I was in the squad for that, but didn't make selection for the competition, which was just hideous. So I was then in the mindset of, do I stop rugby completely, or do I still want to play at club level? And I made the decision to have another season at Harlequins and finish on my terms, and just have a great season of playing with friends, revisiting why I play rugby, and ultimately that's to have fun and run around with people. Towards the end of that season, I had a fairly decent shoulder injury, and I then had to go to work with my arm in a sling, and it was just really awkward and embarrassing, and just made my job very difficult when I'm trying to provide a good service to my PT clients. And I think that was the point where I was like, I can't really keep doing this. It's got to be career or rugby. There wasn't really much room for both at that point, because training around my injuries was becoming a full-time job in itself. So managing my past injuries and making sure that I was fit week on week was tough. And then to have an injury that I'd have to then go to work with, and it would be quite difficult. It was too difficult to manage in the end. So retiring from the game, it was tough. It was really difficult to step away from a game that's given me so much. To go back to work as a PT in the city, it was a complete transformation of my day-to-day life. Getting up in the morning at 5:30 was not ideal, but you've got to do these things. And so over the last couple of years, I've been looking for ways to give back to the sport. I've been looking for ways to push myself academically, push myself in a career context, and I think I'm really well set, or I fit really well into the S&C space, based on my playing experiences and based on my S&C background. That's why I'm launching FeePo, is to help people of all levels gain some strength and conditioning input in order to make their playing experiences better, and also hopefully keep them injury free.